Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something that gives a lot of PLO players pause.
Yeah, we're talking about those monotone flops, when the board comes down all one suit, say three spades.
Exactly. That flop hits the table, and instantly your mind starts racing.
Definitely. The big question is, okay, how likely is it really that someone else at the table just flopped a flush? It feels dangerous.
It does. And that's our mission for this deep dive, right? To give you a more um, intuitive feel for those odds.
Based on solid probabilities, as of, well, May 1st, 2025, we want to help you estimate the chance someone's holding those suited cards.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Imagine you're in a typical PLO game. Full ring, so 8 opponents.
Right. And the flop comes, let's say, Jack 7-2, all diamonds, JD 72 pens.
What are the chances then that at least one of those 8 players has 2 diamonds in their hand?
And crucially, remember, in PLO, you have to use exactly 2 cards from your 4-card hand to make your 5-card poker hand.
That rule changes everything compared to Hold'em. So that near certainty, it fundamentally shifts your strategy, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It demands a much tighter approach, way more caution than maybe on other textures.
Okay, so before we tackle the 8 opponent monster, let's break it down. Simplest case first.
Heads up, just you and one opponent.
What's the basic chance that player flopped the flush on that JD7D Tekken board? Can we establish a baseline?
Yeah, good starting point. So against just one opponent, the approximate probability is somewhere in the 20 to 25% range.
20 to 25%. Okay.
That rough number considers the cards left, after the flop, there are 10 diamonds left out of 49 unseen cards.
Right.
And it also sort of factors in that PLO players, while they like playing suited cards, they tend to select hands with suits.
Makes sense. So for our calculations going forward, what numbers should we use?
Let's use 25%, just for simplicity. It makes the math easier as we add more players. And this assumes you don't have any diamonds yourself, giving them the best possible shot.
Okay, 25% chance they have the flush, which means, conversely, a 75% chance they don't.
Exactly. That 75% miss rate is our building block.
So how does this scale? What happens when we add player number 2?
Right. This is where it gets interesting. The easiest way to think about it is calculating the chance that nobody has the flush.
And then subtract that from 100%.
Precisely. So for 2 opponents,
Okay, walk me through it.
the chance player 1 doesn't have it is 75%, right?
Right.
And the chance player 2 also doesn't have it is 75%, assuming independence for now, roughly.
So multiply those together. 0.75 times 0.75.
Yep, that gives you 0.5625 or 56.25%. That's the chance neither of them has the flush.
So 100 minus that is 43.75%.
Right, which we can round up slightly, call it about 44% chance that at least one of the two has a flush.
Wow. Okay, just one extra player nearly doubles the danger.
It ramps up fast. And remember that 44% is kind of a baseline if your opponents are super nitty.
Ah, right. Player tendencies.
Yeah, that number might dip a few points, maybe closer to 40%.
Okay, understood. What about 3 opponents?
Same logic. We take 0.75 times 0.75 times 0.75.
So 0.75 cubed.
Exactly. That comes out to about 0.4219, let's say 42%-ish,
Meaning the chance at least one has it is 100 minus 42.
which is 58%. So with 3 opponents, it's already more likely than not someone's holding 2 diamonds.
58%. The odds are climbing really steeply. Let's keep going. 4 opponents.
Okay, 4 opponents. Now we're looking at 0.75 to the power of 4.
Okay.
That works out to roughly 0.3164, or let's call it 32% chance that none of them have it.
So 100 minus 32 is 68%.
About 68%, yeah. A bit over 2/3 chance someone has a flush against 4 players.
We're getting into really high probability territory now. 5 opponents.
All right, 0.75 to the power of 5. That calculation gives us approximately 0.2373.
So just under 24% chance that nobody has it.
Right, which means the probability of at least one flush being out there is 100 minus, say, 24%.
That's 76%.
Roughly 76%. Now it's really looking likely.
Okay, 6 opponents. It's got to be getting close to a sure thing.
Pretty close. So 0.75 to the power of 6, that's
Yeah.
about 0.17800. So just under 18% chance that the coast is clear.
Meaning an 82% chance someone has the flush.
About 82%, yeah. Very likely now.
Okay, let's push on. 7 opponents.
7 opponents, 0.75 to the power of 7. That drops the nobody has its probability down to around 0.1335.
13%. So
So 100 minus 13 gives you 87%.
87% chance with 7 opponents someone has flopped the flush. That's huge.
It really is.
All right, let's bring it home. The full table scenario we started with, 8 opponents.
Okay, the big one.
Yeah.
0.75 to the power of 8. The probability that none of those 8 players have 2 diamonds is now just about 0.1001.
10%. Only a 10% chance that nobody has the flush.
That's right, which means, drum roll,
The probability that at least one of those 8 players has the flush is 100 minus 10.
90%.
90. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, roughly 90%. It's almost a statistical certainty.
So basically, if you're sitting there at a full PLO table and the flop comes monotone,
Mm.
you pretty much have to assume someone has a flush.
That's the safe assumption, absolutely. The odds are just overwhelming. So thinking about that 90%, how does that affect what hands you even decide to play before the flop, knowing this is a possibility against many players?
That's a great point. It really forces you to value those suited connectors or suited aces even more pre-flop if you expect a multi-way pot.
Mm.
But, okay, these are the raw numbers. You mentioned earlier, things aren't always standard.
Right, these calculations are based on that baseline 25% chance per player. Real games have, well, real players.
So what kind of real-world things can shift these numbers?
Well, like we touched on, player tendencies are huge. That 25% assumes a sort of standard PLO player.
But if you're at a table full of rocks, really tight players,
Exactly. Maybe they only play really premium suited hands. Their individual chance might drop closer to, say, 20%.
how much does that change the overall picture? For 8 players.
It does reduce it. If you run the math with 0.8, the miss rate for 20% to the power of 8, you get around 17% chance nobody has it. So 100 minus 17.
Is 83%.
Yeah.
Still very high, but noticeably lower than 90.
Right, maybe closer to 85% in reality with card removal, but
Yeah.
yeah, lower. Conversely, if everyone's super loose, splashing around with any 2 suited cards.
The odds could creep up even higher than 90.
Marginally, yeah. Maybe slightly higher. Player type matters.
Okay, that makes total sense.
What else?
Blockers. What you hold in your hand is really important,
Ah, right. If I have diamonds in my hand on that JD70 tuppet flop,
especially if you hold the ace of diamonds, the ad, or maybe ad KD.
how does that change things?
Well, first, if you hold, say, 2 diamonds yourself, there are fewer diamonds left in the deck for your opponents. Instead of 10, there are only 8 left.
Okay, so that reduces their individual chances.
It does. Their player probability might drop from 25% down to maybe 22 or 23%, depending on the exact cards.
And holding the ace, the nut flush draw, is obviously huge for its own reasons. Absolutely. It means even if they do have a flush, yours is bigger if you hit. So holding blockers lowers the odds against you slightly. For 8 players, maybe it drops that 90% down to like 87 or 88%.
Still incredibly high, but a small adjustment.
A small adjustment, yeah. Every little bit helps, but it doesn't change the fundamental danger.
And the last factor, position and action.
Oh, absolutely critical. Forget the baseline probabilities for a second. If the flop comes monotone and someone, especially out of position, starts betting or raising big,
That's telling you something much more direct than the statistics.
exactly. Experienced players generally aren't bluffing hard into a scary monotone board multi-way if there's significant aggression.
You should probably believe them. They likely have a made flush.
That's the most straightforward explanation usually. Betting patterns often override the raw math in the moment.
So the math gives us the foundation, the danger level, but the specific action refines it.
Perfect summary. Use the math as your guide, but watch the players.
Okay, let's really hammer home the main point for everyone listening. You're in a PLO game, 8 opponents, flop comes monotone.
The chance that at least one of them has a flush is hovering around 90%.
90%. It's just a massive, massive probability. You cannot ignore it.
You really can't. It dictates how you have to play the hand, unless you're holding the nut flush yourself.
The A's high flush.
Yeah, you have to assume someone else has a flush and proceed with extreme caution. Even with the nuts, if there's crazy action, you still need to be a bit wary.
So the clear advice is, be super careful on these flops, especially multi-way.
Prioritize having the nuts. Be very suspicious of big bets or raises.
And be ready to fold hands that look good on other boards like sets or 2-pair.
Often, yes. Those hands can be very expensive traps on monotone boards in PLO. Understanding these odds saves you chips big time in the long run.
This has been really illuminating. It's easy to feel like monotone flops are dangerous, but seeing the numbers, especially that 90%,
It really crystallizes why they're dangerous, doesn't it? It pushes you towards a more disciplined approach.
definitely less guesswork, more informed decision-making.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's leave our listeners with something to chew on, a final thought.
Right.
When you're facing that monotone flop, 8 opponents looking back at you, what's driving your decision more? Is it that stark, almost certain 90% probability?
Or are you trying to play the player? Reading tells, exploiting tendencies, maybe trying to bluff someone off a weaker flush?
Yeah. Are you playing the probabilities or playing the people? It's a tough balance, especially on those scary suited boards. Something to think about next time you're in the thick of it.
Good question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.